Lisa Johnson had always been a dreamer. Living in a modest suburban home in Austin, Texas, she spent her days managing household chores and looking after her two kids, Emma and Noah. Her husband, Mark, worked as a software engineer at a well-known tech company, earning a decent salary that kept their family comfortable. Mark was a practical man, someone who believed that life should follow a set pattern. Study, get a job, settle down, and retire peacefully. But Lisa's mind worked differently. She had always been fascinated by technology and innovation. Even though she had a degree in business administration, her passion for tech never faded. She often found herself coming up with ideas for apps. Some simple, some complex. But each one sparked excitement in her heart. One evening, while clearing the dinner table, Lisa hesitated before speaking. "Mark, I've been thinking about an app idea." Mark chuckled, sipping his coffee. "Another one? What is it this time?" His tone was light-hearted but dismissive. Lisa knew he never took her ideas seriously, but she pressed on. "It's an app that helps small businesses manage customer feedback efficiently. It collects reviews, categorizes them using AI, and suggests ways to improve based on patterns." Mark smirked, setting his cup down. "Lisa, do you have any idea how complicated AI is? And even if it worked, companies already have solutions for that. You should focus on something more practical. Maybe start a home-based bakery or something." Lisa felt a pang of frustration. It wasn't the first time Mark had belittled her ideas. Every time she shared something innovative, he dismissed it with a laugh, as if she were a child dreaming about flying cars. "But Mark, this could really help small businesses grow. Not everyone can afford expensive analytics tools." Mark shook his head. "Lisa, app development isn't easy. You need coding skills, a team, funding. And even then, most apps fail. Just stick to what you're good at, running the house and taking care of the kids. Leave tech to the experts." Lisa bit her lip, holding back the urge to argue. She had learned that debating with Mark never led anywhere. But something inside her refused to let go of her dream. She knew she wasn't just another housewife with a passing idea. She had the determination to make it work. If Mark wouldn't support her, she would have to prove herself without him. That night, as Mark snored beside her, Lisa lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She reached for her phone and started researching. She read articles about app development, watched YouTube tutorials, and joined online communities where developers discussed trends. She didn't have a coding background, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. She discovered platforms like Bubble and Adalo, which allowed users to build apps without extensive coding knowledge. Excitement rushed through her veins. Maybe she didn't need to be a programmer. Maybe she just needed the right tools. Over the next few weeks, Lisa carved out time from her daily routine to work on her idea. After dropping Emma and Noah at school, she spent hours experimenting with no-code platforms, testing different features and refining her concept. She read about user experience, market research, and startup strategies. Slowly but surely, her idea started taking shape. Meanwhile, Mark remained oblivious. Every evening, he scrolled through his phone, occasionally chuckling at memes or discussing work-related topics. He had no idea that his wife was silently working on something that could change their lives. One afternoon, while waiting in line at a cafe, Lisa overheard two small business owners discussing customer complaints. "It's frustrating," one of them said. "By the time we notice negative reviews, it's too late. We need something that alerts us in real time." Lisa's heart raced. This was exactly the problem her app aimed to solve. She wanted to turn around and tell them about her idea, but she held back. It wasn't ready yet. But this was proof that there was a real need for it. Her motivation soared. She started waking up before sunrise to work on her prototype. She signed up for free online courses, learning about UI/UX design and business strategies. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when she felt overwhelmed. But she reminded herself that success wasn't about having all the answers. It was about persistence. One evening, Mark noticed her browsing tech forums and raised an eyebrow. "Still on that app idea?" he asked. Lisa nodded, keeping her voice neutral. "Just reading about startups." Mark laughed. "Lisa, trust me, this stuff is harder than it looks. You're wasting your time." Lisa forced a smile and changed the subject. She had stopped expecting validation from him. She knew that one day he would see what she was capable of. Until then, she would keep working in silence. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa's days became a delicate balancing act between her family responsibilities and her secret project. Every morning after packing lunch for Emma and Noah and seeing them off to school, she would rush through her household chores with newfound energy. The moment Mark left for work, she would sit at the dining table, her laptop open, notebooks scattered around her, and a cup of coffee by her side. She knew she had only a few hours before she had to pick up the kids, prepare dinner, and return to the routine of being a wife and mother. But those stolen hours in between were her sanctuary, a time when she could immerse herself in her dream without judgment or interruption. She learned faster than she had expected. The world of no-code app development was fascinating, and she found herself getting lost in it. Platforms like Bubble and Adalo allowed her to build basic functionalities, and she started experimenting with different features. She joined online communities, reading stories of other entrepreneurs who had launched successful apps without knowing how to code. Every success story fueled her determination. The idea of quitting never crossed her mind, even on the days when nothing seemed to work, when bugs frustrated her, or when the platform limitations made her question if she could ever build a professional product. One afternoon she was deep into testing an interface design when her phone rang. It was her old college friend, Rachel Green, who now lived in San Francisco and worked as a product manager at a growing tech startup. Lisa hadn't spoken to Rachel in a while, and for a moment she debated whether to answer. But something told her this call might be important. She picked up, and within minutes the conversation turned toward Lisa's secret project. "You're building an app?" Rachel asked, surprised but intrigued. "That's amazing. What's it about?" Lisa hesitated for a moment before explaining her idea. Unlike Mark, Rachel didn't dismiss it. Instead, she listened intently and even gave her some suggestions. "You should talk to small business owners directly," Rachel advised. "See what they actually need. Your idea is solid, but market validation is everything." That evening, after putting the kids to bed, Lisa thought about Rachel's words. So far she had been working in isolation, too afraid to put her idea out in the world. It was time to change that. The next morning she drove to South Congress Avenue, a lively area in Austin filled with small boutiques, coffee shops, and family-owned businesses. With her heart pounding, she entered a local bakery, Sweet Treats, owned by a middle-aged woman named Linda Parker. Lisa introduced herself and nervously explained that she was developing an app designed to help small businesses manage customer feedback. Linda's eyes lit up with interest. "You know, that actually sounds really useful," she said. "We get a ton of reviews, but it's hard to keep track of what customers are really asking for." Lisa asked if she could spend a few days observing how the bakery handled feedback. To her surprise, Linda agreed. For the next week, Lisa visited Sweet Treats every morning, noting how they managed customer reviews, how they responded to complaints, and where their biggest struggles were. She saw firsthand how overwhelmed Linda and her staff felt trying to sort through feedback manually. Lisa realized that her app needed more than just AI-driven categorization. It had to be incredibly simple to use, something that a busy shop owner could navigate in seconds. She adjusted her design accordingly, making it more intuitive. She also noticed that businesses like Linda's struggled with responding to feedback quickly, so she decided to add automated response suggestions, something she hadn't thought of before. Mark, meanwhile, remained clueless about her growing ambition. If he noticed how often she was on her laptop or how she sometimes seemed lost in thought, he didn't comment. He was too busy with his own work, confident that Lisa's little app idea would soon fade away like a passing hobby. But Lisa wasn't stopping. She worked harder than ever, fueled by the validation she had received from Linda and other small business owners she had spoken to. She even started reaching out to startup incubators in Austin, looking for mentors who could guide her through the early stages of building a business. One evening, as she sat on the couch with her laptop, tweaking the final prototype of her app, Mark glanced over and smirked. "Still playing around with that thing?" he asked. Lisa looked up and smiled. "Yeah. Just trying a few things." She had learned not to argue, not to seek approval. Her success would speak for itself. Mark returned to his phone, shaking his head slightly, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing beneath his own roof. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa's confidence grew with each passing day. She refined her app, now calling it FeedFlow, a name she carefully chose after researching branding strategies. The more she worked, the more she realized how much she had underestimated herself. For years she had allowed Mark's words to convince her that she wasn't capable of building something significant, that technology was beyond her grasp. But here she was, coding workflows, designing user-friendly interfaces, and even testing the app with real businesses. She had kept in touch with Rachel, who became an unexpected mentor, offering advice and connecting Lisa with people who could help. One of Rachel's friends, Tom Carter, a UI/UX designer from Palo Alto, reviewed Lisa's prototype and gave her invaluable feedback. "It's simple and easy to use, which is great for small business owners," he said during a Zoom call. "But you need to make sure it looks professional. A polished design builds trust." Lisa took his advice seriously, spending nights tweaking the aesthetics of her app. She learned how to use Figma, experimenting with color schemes, typography, and layouts. It was exhausting but exhilarating. The biggest challenge came when she realized she needed to integrate AI-based sentiment analysis. She had no experience with AI, and hiring a developer was out of her budget. But she wasn't going to let that stop her. She found a workaround, using OpenAI's GPT API to analyze and categorize customer feedback. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it worked well enough for a beta version. One afternoon she sat in a corner of a busy Starbucks in downtown Austin, nervously opening an email from a local startup incubator, Capital Factory. She had applied for their mentorship program weeks ago, hoping to get guidance on launching her app. She held her breath as she read the first line. "Congratulations. You've been selected for a mentorship session with our startup advisors." Her hands trembled with excitement. This was huge. She had never imagined getting this far. That evening she cooked Mark's favorite meal, grilled salmon with mashed potatoes, hoping he would be in a good mood. As they sat down for dinner, she hesitated before speaking. "Mark, I have some news." He barely looked up from his phone. "What's up?" She swallowed her nervousness. "I got accepted for a mentorship session at Capital Factory. It's a startup incubator in Austin. They help new entrepreneurs refine their business ideas." Mark blinked as if he hadn't heard her correctly. "Wait, what? You applied to a startup incubator?" She nodded. "Yeah. They liked my idea and want to help me develop it further." He set his fork down, staring at her. "Lisa, this is getting ridiculous. You're seriously thinking of turning this into a real business?" She felt her excitement dim slightly but held her ground. "Yes. I've been working hard on it and I believe it has potential." He scoffed. "Lisa, you don't have the experience or the skills to run a tech startup. These things require funding, investors, teams. Do you even know what you're getting into?" A familiar frustration bubbled inside her, but she remained calm. "That's why I'm getting mentorship. To learn." He shook his head, muttering under his breath. "This is insane. You're wasting your time on a fantasy." She forced a smile and continued eating, but inside she felt a mix of anger and determination. She wasn't seeking his approval anymore. She was proving something to herself. The next day, Lisa walked into the Capital Factory office, a modern space buzzing with energy. Entrepreneurs gathered around tables, discussing ideas, typing on laptops, and pitching investors. She felt a rush of inspiration just being in that environment. She met her mentor, Sarah Whitman, a venture capitalist who had helped launch several successful startups. Sarah listened carefully as Lisa explained feed flow, nodding with interest. "You're solving a real problem," Sarah said. "Small businesses struggle with customer feedback management. But to make this work, you'll need traction. Have you considered getting a few businesses to beta test it?" Lisa had already thought about that. "Yes. I've spoken to some local business owners and they're interested in trying it out." Sarah smiled. "Good. Here's what I recommend. Get at least 5 businesses to use your app for a few months. Gather data, see how they interact with it, and refine the product based on real feedback. Once you have solid results, you can approach investors." Lisa left the session feeling more motivated than ever. She immediately reached out to Linda from Sweet Treats, who agreed to test the app. She also approached other small businesses, coffee shops, salons, even a local gym. To her delight, they were eager to try a tool that could simplify their review management. Over the next few weeks, Lisa worked tirelessly, making adjustments based on user feedback. Some businesses loved the automated response suggestions, while others requested integration with their social media platforms. She tweaked the features accordingly, making feed flow more robust. One evening, Mark came home to find Lisa on a Zoom call with Rachel and Tom, discussing the app's UI improvements. He sighed loudly, making it clear he was annoyed. Lisa, this has gone too far. You're spending all your time on this. What about the house? The kids? She muted her microphone, taking a deep breath. The house is clean, the kids are in bed, and everything is taken care of. I'm just working on something I'm passionate about. He ran a hand through his hair. But for what? Do you really think this is going to make money? She looked him in the eye. I don't just think it. I know it will. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa barely noticed the exhaustion anymore. Every day she juggled the demands of home, her children's school activities, and the growing responsibilities of her startup. FeedFlow was no longer just an idea. It was a living, evolving product being tested by real businesses. Linda from Sweet Treats had already given her valuable feedback, and 3 other businesses, a hair salon in downtown Austin, a fitness studio in Round Rock, and a family-owned coffee shop near the University of Texas, were actively using the app. Each time Lisa checked the analytics, she saw engagement growing, and that fueled her motivation even further. But she hadn't told Mark the full extent of her progress. He still thought she was just experimenting with a side project that would eventually fizzle out, and she preferred it that way. She wasn't ready for another argument. One afternoon, Lisa received an email from Sarah Whitman at Capital Factory. The subject line made her heart race. Investor pitch opportunity, reply ASAP. She clicked it open and scanned the message quickly. Sarah had recommended her for a private pitch event where early-stage founders could present their startups to a group of angel investors. It was invite-only, and FeedFlow had made the cut. Lisa's hands trembled as she read the details. This was it. This was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed about. But excitement quickly turned to anxiety. She had never pitched in front of investors before. Would they take her seriously? Would they dismiss her like Mark always did? She had no formal business background, no flashy credentials. Just a working product, data from her beta testers, and a belief that she was solving a real problem. That evening she sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, scribbling ideas for her pitch. Mark walked in, eyeing her suspiciously. What now? He asked. Lisa hesitated before answering. I got invited to pitch my app to investors next week. His eyebrows shot up. Investors? Like real ones? She nodded, bracing for his reaction. He let out a dry laugh. Lisa, come on. Investors don't throw money at stay-at-home moms with no experience. These people are sharks. They'll rip you apart. She felt the familiar sting of his doubt but refused to let it sink in this time. We'll see, she said simply, returning to her notes. Mark shook his head, muttering something under his breath as he walked away. Over the next few days, Lisa immersed herself in preparing her pitch. She watched countless YouTube videos of successful startup presentations, took notes on how founders structured their speeches, and practiced in front of the mirror late at night. She reached out to Rachel, who connected her with a startup founder who had raised funding before. He offered her a piece of advice that stuck with her. Investors don't just bet on ideas. They bet on people. If you believe in what you're building, make them believe too. The night before the pitch event, Lisa barely slept. Her stomach twisted in knots as she imagined standing in front of a room full of seasoned investors, their eyes scrutinizing her every word. She wore her best blazer, kept her hair simple, and arrived at the venue an hour early. The event was held in a sleek, modern conference room inside the Capital Factory building, where other founders were nervously going over their slides. She took a deep breath as Sarah walked up to her. You got this, Sarah said with an encouraging smile. When it was Lisa's turn, she stepped onto the stage and faced the panel of investors seated in front of her. The room fell silent. She took a deep breath and began. Hi, I'm Lisa Carter, the founder of FeedFlow, a platform that helps small businesses manage customer feedback efficiently. Her voice was steady, more confident than she had expected. She clicked through her slides, showing real data from her beta testers, explaining how her AI-powered system categorized feedback and provided actionable insights. She ended with her vision: to make FeedFlow the go-to tool for small business owners struggling to keep up with online reviews. When she finished, there was a pause before the questions started. One investor, a sharp-eyed woman in a navy suit, leaned forward. You don't have a technical background. How do you plan to scale this? Lisa had anticipated this question. I built the prototype myself using no-code platforms and integrated AI through existing APIs. But I know that to scale I'll need a development team. That's why I'm here, to secure funding and bring in the right talent. The woman nodded, seemingly impressed. Another investor asked about monetization. Lisa explained her pricing model. A freemium plan for small businesses and a premium subscription for those needing advanced analytics. By the end of the Q&A session, she could see a few heads nodding in approval. As she stepped off the stage, Sarah gave her a thumbs up. You did great, she whispered. Lisa let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Whether she secured funding or not, she had just taken a major step forward. That evening, Lisa returned home feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Mark was on the couch watching TV. He barely looked up. How'd your little pitch thing go? He asked. Lisa smiled to herself as she set down her bag. It went well, she said. What she didn't tell him, at least not yet, was that after the event 2 investors had approached her, expressing serious interest in FeedFlow. They had exchanged business cards and scheduled follow-up meetings for the following week. This wasn't just an idea anymore. It was becoming real. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa barely had time to process everything that had happened at the pitch event before she was thrown into a whirlwind of meetings. The next morning, she received emails from both investors who had shown interest. David Lawson from Silverstone Ventures and Emily Hartman from Austin Tech Fund. They wanted to schedule follow-up discussions to dive deeper into FeedFlow's business model and growth strategy. Lisa's heart pounded as she read their messages. This was exactly what she had worked for. Yet now that it was happening, self-doubt started creeping in. What if she wasn't prepared enough? What if they asked questions she couldn't answer? She shook off the fear and reminded herself of how far she had come. She had built something valuable and now it was time to fight for it. She spent the next 2 days preparing. She refined her financial projections, updated her user engagement metrics, and even sought advice from a local startup mentor she had met through Rachel. When she walked into her first meeting with David Lawson at a sleek downtown Austin cafe, she felt more ready than she ever had before. David was in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair and a confident yet approachable demeanor. He got straight to the point. Lisa, I love what you're doing with FeedFlow. Small businesses need better tools for managing customer feedback and you've built something with real potential. But tell me, where do you see this in 5 years? Lisa took a deep breath and laid out her vision. She spoke about expanding the platform's AI capabilities, integrating with major business software like Square and Shopify, and eventually making FeedFlow a global brand. David listened intently, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he smiled. I like your ambition. Let's keep talking. Her second meeting with Emily Hartman was even more intense. Emily was known for being a tough investor who didn't sugarcoat anything. As soon as Lisa sat down in the conference room at Austin Tech Fund's office, Emily pulled up FeedFlow's user data on her tablet. I see you have around 50 active businesses testing your platform. That's good, but how do you plan to scale to 5,000? Lisa expected this question and explained her strategy. Partnering with business associations, running targeted digital marketing campaigns and leveraging word-of-mouth referrals. Emily didn't react immediately, just stared at her with piercing blue eyes. Then she nodded slowly. It's a solid plan. But execution is everything. Show me results in the next 3 months and we'll talk funding. Lisa left both meetings feeling exhilarated and overwhelmed. She had come so close, but she knew that securing investment wasn't guaranteed. She needed to prove that FeedFlow could grow fast. That night she sat on the couch with her laptop, brainstorming her next move. Mark, who had been quiet since the pitch event, finally spoke up. So, are you actually getting money from these investors or is this just more of your fantasy world? Lisa clenched her jaw, refusing to let his negativity drag her down. They're interested, she said simply. Now I just need to show them the numbers. Mark scoffed. Yeah, good luck with that. He turned back to the TV, dismissing her as usual. Instead of arguing, Lisa channeled her frustration into action. She spent the next several weeks working tirelessly. She improved FeedFlow's user experience, added new features based on customer feedback, and launched a social media campaign to attract more businesses. She reached out to small business Facebook groups, offering free trials and personalized onboarding sessions. Her efforts paid off. Within a month, her user base had doubled. By the end of the second month, it had tripled. One evening, as Lisa was reviewing her latest metrics, her phone buzzed. It was an email from Emily Hartman. "Let's talk." Lisa's heart pounded as she opened it. Emily had been tracking FeedFlow's progress and was impressed. She wanted to move forward with an investment offer. Lisa could hardly believe it. She quickly scheduled a meeting, barely able to contain her excitement. When the day finally came, she walked into Emily's office with a mix of confidence and nervous energy. Emily didn't waste time. "You've shown me you can execute. I'm offering $250,000 for 20% equity. Take it or leave it." Lisa's mind raced. This was a huge opportunity, but she needed to negotiate wisely. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, "but I believe FeedFlow's value is higher. How about $250,000 for 15%? Emily studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Deal." Lisa left the office feeling like she was walking on air. She had done it. She had secured real investment for FeedFlow. She had proved everyone, including Mark, wrong. That evening, when she got home, she placed the signed investment agreement on the kitchen table in front of Mark. He picked it up, reading through it with a furrowed brow. When he looked up, his face was unreadable. "So, this is real?" Lisa nodded, suppressing a smile. "Very real." Mark exhaled, rubbing his forehead. I didn't think you could actually pull this off." Lisa finally let herself smile. "Well, I did." Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa barely had time to process the whirlwind of events that had unfolded over the past few months. After securing the investment deal with Emily Hartman, she found herself busier than ever. The reality of running a funded startup was entirely different from working on it in silence at night while Mark scoffed at her efforts. Now expectations were higher and the pressure was immense. With $250,000 in funding, Lisa had to allocate the money strategically. The first thing she did was hire a small but skilled team: 2 developers, a marketing specialist, and a customer support representative. She also rented a small co-working space in downtown Austin, a far cry from the home office where she had built FeedFlow from scratch. Despite the rapid progress, the weight of her personal life still hung over her like a dark cloud. Mark's attitude had shifted from outright mockery to silent resentment. He no longer dismissed her work as a fantasy, but he also made no effort to support her. He had always been the one with the stable job, the predictable paycheck, the steady routine. Now Lisa was the one making waves, and he didn't know how to handle it. One evening, as Lisa was finalizing a marketing strategy with her team, Mark called her. "Are you coming home anytime soon?" he asked, irritation clear in his voice. "I told you I have late meetings this week," Lisa replied, trying to keep her patience. "You're always working," Mark muttered. "It's like you don't even care about this marriage anymore." Lisa clenched her jaw. She had spent years supporting his career, listening to his work problems, making sure everything at home ran smoothly. Now that she had something of her own, he was making her feel guilty for it. Instead of arguing, Lisa focused on her business. FeedFlow was growing at an exponential rate. Small business owners were loving the platform and word-of-mouth referrals were pouring in. One particularly successful restaurant in Austin, Franklin Barbecue, had seen a 40% increase in customer engagement after using FeedFlow. Their positive feedback led to several other restaurants signing up. Lisa's marketing specialist, Nate, suggested they leverage success stories like Franklin Barbecue's to attract even bigger clients. They put together case studies, ran targeted ads, and reached out to restaurant associations across Texas. Within 2 months, FeedFlow had expanded beyond Austin into Houston, Dallas, and even San Antonio. But with success came new challenges. One of the biggest hurdles was managing the influx of new users. FeedFlow's servers struggled with the growing demand, and occasional glitches frustrated customers. Lisa's developers worked around the clock to fix issues, but the pressure was intense. One evening, while reviewing customer feedback, Lisa received an email from Emily Hartman. It was brief and to the point. "Your growth numbers are impressive, but your customer retention rate needs work. Fix the technical issues before they become a problem. Investors don't like problems." Lisa knew Emily was right. No matter how fast they were growing, retaining customers was just as important. She called an emergency meeting with her team and set a strict 2-week deadline to resolve all major bugs. As Lisa poured herself into the business, her marriage continued to deteriorate. Mark barely spoke to her, and when he did, it was only to complain. One night he finally snapped. "I don't even know who you are anymore," he said bitterly. "You're obsessed with this company. It's like I don't exist." Lisa felt a pang of guilt but also frustration. "Mark, I have worked for this. I have fought for this. You never believed in me, and now that it's working, you're acting like I'm the problem." Mark shook his head. "I just wanted a normal life. A wife who was home. Not this." Lisa's heart sank. He didn't see her success as something to celebrate. He saw it as a threat. The breaking point came a few days later. Lisa had been invited to speak at a major business conference in San Francisco. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to showcase FeedFlow to industry leaders and potential investors. When she told Mark, his response was immediate. "You're choosing this over our marriage?" Lisa stared at him in disbelief. "This isn't a choice, Mark. This is my work, my future." Mark scoffed. "Yeah, well, don't expect me to be here when you get back." Lisa felt a lump in her throat, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Maybe that's for the best," she said quietly. She left for San Francisco with a heavy heart, but she knew she was making the right decision. The conference was a turning point for FeedFlow. Lisa's presentation was a huge success, and she connected with major investors, business leaders, and even potential partners. When she returned to Austin, she found that Mark had moved out. The house felt empty, but for the first time in a long time, Lisa felt free. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa returned to Austin to find the house eerily silent. Mark had followed through on his words. He was gone. His clothes, his laptop, his favorite coffee mug, all missing from their usual places. It was strange how quickly someone's presence could turn into an absence. At first she felt a pang of grief, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of clarity. She had spent so much time trying to balance her marriage and her ambition, trying to make him see what she saw, but Mark had made his choice. And so had she. Instead of dwelling on the emotional weight of his departure, Lisa buried herself in work. FeedFlow was now in a critical phase. The conference in San Francisco had opened up new opportunities, and she had investors expressing interest in a second round of funding. But there was also a new level of scrutiny. The company's rapid growth had attracted competitors, and Lisa knew that if they didn't innovate quickly, they could lose their edge. She spent hours in the office, strategizing with her team on how to improve user retention and enhance the platform's capabilities. They rolled out a feature allowing restaurant owners to directly integrate their social media promotions within FeedFlow, making marketing even more seamless. One evening, as she was finalizing updates with her lead developer, she received a message from Emily Hartman. "Call me." Lisa immediately dialed her number, her stomach twisting in anticipation. Emily didn't waste time. "I've been watching your progress. Investors are interested, but they need reassurance. Your competitors are moving fast. You need a bold move, something that makes it clear that FeedFlow isn't just another app. It's the future of restaurant marketing." Lisa ran a hand through her hair. She knew Emily was right. "I have an idea," she said. "What if we partner with a major restaurant chain? Something big, so that everyone knows we're not just another startup." Emily was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Now you're thinking like a CEO." Lisa spent the next few weeks reaching out to every major restaurant chain she could think of. Most either ignored her or politely declined, unwilling to take a risk on a relatively new company. But then an unexpected opportunity presented itself. One afternoon she received an email from the corporate office of Shake Shack. They were interested in exploring digital marketing tools to increase customer engagement, and FeedFlow had caught their attention. Lisa's heart pounded as she read the email. This was the breakthrough she needed. She quickly arranged a meeting at their headquarters in New York City. The night before her flight, she sat alone in her empty house, reflecting on how much her life had changed. A year ago she was quietly building FeedFlow in secret, afraid of Mark's criticism. Now she was flying across the country to negotiate a deal with one of the biggest restaurant brands in the US. As she packed her bags, she received a text from Mark. "I hope you're happy," it read. No explanation, no follow-up. Lisa stared at the message for a long moment before deleting it. She didn't need to justify her happiness to anyone. The meeting with Shake Shack was intense. Lisa presented FeedFlow's capabilities with confidence, highlighting its success stories and explaining how it could revolutionize customer engagement. The executives listened carefully, asking tough questions. She could tell they were intrigued but hesitant. Then, just as she was wrapping up, one of the executives, a man named Greg Walters, leaned forward. "We like what we're hearing, but we need proof. If you can demonstrate real impact in one of our test locations, we'll consider a partnership." Lisa knew this was her moment. She immediately proposed a pilot program in their Austin location, offering to implement FeedFlow at no cost for a month. Greg exchanged glances with his team before nodding. "All right. 1 month. Impress us." Lisa left the meeting feeling both exhilarated and nervous. This was a make-or-break opportunity. Back in Austin, her team worked tirelessly to perfect the rollout. They customized the platform specifically for Shake Shack, optimizing its features to maximize customer interaction. When the pilot program launched, Lisa monitored the data obsessively. At first, progress was slow, but within 2 weeks, the numbers began to climb. Customer engagement skyrocketed, and foot traffic increased by 35%. Lisa compiled the results into a report and sent it to Greg. She waited anxiously for a response. 2 days later, her phone rang. "We're in," Greg said simply. Lisa hung up and let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She had done it. FeedFlow wasn't just another startup anymore. It was now partnered with one of the biggest names in the restaurant industry. The news spread quickly, and within weeks, other major brands started reaching out, wanting to discuss potential collaborations. Investors, once hesitant, were now eager to back the company. Lisa secured a second round of funding, this time in the millions. As she stood in her new office, overlooking downtown Austin, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The late nights, the self-doubt, the moments when she almost gave up. She thought about Mark, about his disbelief, his resentment. And she realized something. She didn't need his approval. He never had. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. The day Lisa signed the final contract with Shake Shack, she sat in her office for a long time, staring at the documents in front of her. This was it. The moment she had dreamed of for years but never truly believed would happen. Her company was no longer a struggling startup. It was now a recognized force in the restaurant marketing industry. Investors were pouring in with offers and competitors were scrambling to catch up. FeedFlow had not only survived, it had thrived. And yet, as she sat there in the quiet of her office, she felt an unexpected wave of emotion. She had won, but at what cost? Her phone buzzed on the desk. It was an unknown number. She almost ignored it but picked up at the last second. "Lisa, it's Mark." The sound of his voice sent a strange chill through her. It had been months since they last spoke, and she had almost convinced herself that she no longer cared. "What do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. He hesitated. "I saw the news about FeedFlow. You really did it." She could hear the mixture of regret and surprise in his tone. "I guess I owe you an apology." Lisa leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. "For what exactly?" she asked. "For not believing in you. For laughing at your ideas. I was wrong." There was silence on the line for a long time. Then he said, "I miss you, Lisa." She opened her eyes and stared out at the Austin skyline. A year ago she might have melted at those words. But now they felt empty. She had built something incredible, something that had nothing to do with him. She had done it on her own, despite his doubt, despite his mockery. "I don't think you miss me, Mark," she finally said. "I think you miss the idea of who you thought I was." Another pause. "Can we at least meet?" he asked, his voice quieter now. Lisa sighed. "I don't think that's a good idea. Take care of yourself, Mark." And with that she ended the call. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. With the Shake Shack deal finalized, other major brands wanted in. Chick-fil-A, Panera Bread, even Starbucks expressed interest in collaborating. Lisa had to expand her team rapidly, hiring more developers, marketers, and customer support specialists. She moved the company into a larger office in downtown Austin, one with sleek glass walls and a rooftop lounge where employees could brainstorm ideas while looking out over the city. She was no longer just an entrepreneur. She was a CEO, leading a company that was shaping the future of restaurant marketing. One evening as she walked through the bustling office, she overheard two of her employees talking. "I still can't believe she built all this after her husband laughed at her ideas," one said. The other nodded. "Yeah, and now look at her. She proved everyone wrong." Lisa smiled to herself as she continued walking. It was funny how life worked. A few months later, Feedflow received an acquisition offer from a major tech company in Silicon Valley. The offer was staggering, $150 million. Lisa sat in a meeting with her board, staring at the numbers on the screen. Selling would mean financial freedom beyond her wildest dreams. But it would also mean giving up control of something she had poured her soul into. She thought about it for days, weighing every possibility. In the end, she made a decision that shocked even her advisors. She declined the offer. Feedflow wasn't just about money. It was about proving that an idea, no matter how small or ridiculed, could change an industry. She wasn't done yet. On the night of Feedflow's 2-year anniversary, Lisa stood in front of her team at their company celebration. 2 years ago, this was just an idea in my head, she said. An idea that many people didn't believe in. But look at us now. We didn't just build an app. We built a movement. The room erupted into applause. As she looked around at the faces of her team, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. As the night wound down, Lisa stepped outside for some air. The cool Texas breeze brushed against her skin as she looked up at the stars. She thought about Mark, about all the nights she had spent doubting herself because of his words. But in the end, his doubt had only fueled her determination. Her phone buzzed again. Another investor offer. She smiled, shook her head, and put the phone back in her pocket. For the first time in a long time, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa woke up before sunrise, the glow of the Austin skyline still flickering in the distance. She stretched, feeling the weight of exhaustion but also the thrill of what lay ahead. The past few months had been a roller coaster of expansion, new deals, and media attention. Feedflow was now a name every restaurant chain was talking about. Her decision to turn down the $150 million acquisition offer had been bold, but it had paid off. Investors respected her vision, and competitors were scrambling to catch up. But success came with a price. Longer hours, endless meetings, and the constant pressure to innovate. That morning, she had a flight to San Francisco. A major investor group wanted to discuss a potential partnership, one that could elevate Feedflow to an international scale. As she packed her bag, her phone buzzed. It was an email from a journalist at Forbes. "We'd love to feature your story," it read. "From underestimated wife to tech CEO, your journey is inspiring. Let's set up an interview." Lisa exhaled slowly, shaking her head. It still felt surreal. Just a few years ago, she was sitting in a tiny apartment, her husband dismissing her ideas as foolish dreams. And now Forbes wanted to tell her story. At the airport, Lisa grabbed a coffee and settled into a quiet corner of the lounge. She opened her laptop, scanning through updates from her team. Just as she was about to reply to an email, she heard a familiar voice. "Lisa." She turned, and there he was, Mark. Her ex-husband stood a few feet away, looking unsure of himself. He seemed different, older, maybe even regretful. "I can't believe it's you," he said. "I read about you in the news." Lisa studied him for a moment, memories flashing through her mind. The nights he laughed at her, the way he made her feel small the moment she walked away. "Mark," she said simply. He hesitated. "You really did it. I mean, you proved me wrong." There it was, the admission she had once longed for. But now it didn't bring the satisfaction she had imagined. "I didn't do it to prove you wrong," she said. "I did it because I believed in myself." He nodded, shifting awkwardly. Are you happy?" he asked. Lisa thought about it. The late nights, the stress, the responsibility, it was overwhelming at times. But the feeling of building something that mattered, something she controlled, was worth it. "Yes," she said. "I am." Mark sighed. "I'm sorry, Lisa. For everything." She gave him a small smile, but there was no bitterness in her heart anymore. "I know," she said. "And I hope you find what makes you happy too." He nodded, and for the first time she saw it, the realization in his eyes that he had lost something valuable. But that was no longer her concern. She had a flight to catch, a company to grow, and a life that was entirely her own. The meeting in San Francisco was intense but promising. Investors were eager to take FeedFlow global, expanding its reach to Europe and Asia. Lisa listened carefully, weighing her options. She had built something powerful, but she also knew the risks of overexpansion. She had seen too many startups collapse under their own weight. That night in her hotel room, she sat on the balcony looking out at the Golden Gate Bridge. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel proud, not just of FeedFlow but of herself. A week later, back in Austin, she walked into the office to a surprise. Her team had planned a small celebration. FeedFlow had officially hit 1 million active users. There were balloons, cheers, and a cake with her face on it. Lisa laughed, feeling a rare moment of pure joy. "We did it," she told her team. "And this is just the beginning." The months that followed were a blur of new challenges and victories. FeedFlow launched in Canada and the UK, signing deals with some of the biggest restaurant chains in the world. Lisa was invited to speak at tech conferences, sharing her journey with aspiring entrepreneurs. She met women who told her that her story had inspired them to chase their own dreams, despite the doubts of those around them. One evening, as she sat in her office going through reports, she received an email from a name she hadn't seen in years. Her old boss from the marketing firm where she had once been overlooked. "Lisa," the email read, "I just wanted to reach out and say congratulations. I always knew you were talented, but I never imagined you'd build something this big. If you're ever in New York, I'd love to catch up." Lisa stared at the screen, shaking her head with a smile. Funny how life worked. A year later, she stood on a stage at a tech summit in Silicon Valley. The crowd was packed with entrepreneurs, investors, and journalists. She took a deep breath and began. "A few years ago, I was just a woman with an idea. An idea that no one believed in. But I believed in it. And that was enough." The audience erupted in applause. That night, as she walked through the streets of San Francisco, she reflected on the journey. She had started with nothing but an idea and the will to see it through. She had faced doubt, failure, and heartbreak. But she had never given up. And now she had built something extraordinary. Lisa wasn't just a CEO. She was proof that dreams, no matter how small or ridiculed, could become reality. And this was only the beginning. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa sat in her Austin office, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the skyline. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the city. FeedFlow had officially entered the billion-dollar valuation club, a milestone she had once only dreamed of. But success came with its own complications. Competitors trying to replicate her model, tech glitches that needed constant attention, and an increasing demand for innovation. As much as she had fought to get here, she knew staying on top would be even harder. She took a deep breath, sipping her now cold coffee. The emails in her inbox ranged from partnership offers to urgent software updates. But there was one email that stood out. It was from the White House. She read it twice to make sure she wasn't imagining things. The email invited her to a special event in Washington, D.C., where entrepreneurs who had made significant contributions to the economy would be recognized. Lisa couldn't help but smile. This was beyond anything she had ever expected. A week later, she was in Washington, standing inside the grand halls of the White House. She felt a mix of excitement and disbelief as she shook hands with senators, CEOs, and even the president himself. "Lisa, your story is truly inspiring," one official told her. "We need more women like you in tech." She thanked him, but she couldn't help but think about how different things had been just a few years ago. If someone had told her back then that she would be standing here, she would have laughed. But here she was, proving that persistence and belief in oneself could change everything. Back in Austin, things were moving fast. A major competitor was aggressively marketing a product similar to FeedFlow, and Lisa's team was scrambling to stay ahead. Investors were pressuring her to expand faster, while her developers warned that rushing new features could compromise quality. She found herself in meeting after meeting making tough decisions. One night, after a long strategy session, she drove home feeling exhausted. As she pulled into her driveway, she saw someone sitting on her porch. It was Rachel, her best friend from college, whom she hadn't seen in months. "I figured you could use a break," Rachel said, holding up a bottle of wine. They sat outside, reminiscing about their old days in Austin, when their biggest concerns were passing exams and finding cheap happy hour deals. "I can't believe you're this tech mogul now," Rachel said, shaking her head. "But Lisa, are you happy?" The question caught Lisa off guard. She had spent so much time pushing forward that she hadn't stopped to ask herself that. I think so, she said slowly. But sometimes, it feels like I'm just trying to survive. Rachel nodded. Success is great, but don't forget to live too. The words stayed with Lisa over the next few weeks. She started making small changes, taking weekends off, making time for old friends, even joining a running club to clear her mind. And oddly enough, the more she balanced her life, the sharper her business decisions became. When the competitor launched their copycat product, FeedFlow was already ahead with a feature they hadn't anticipated. The market responded and Lisa's company remained dominant. Then one evening she received an unexpected call from a number she didn't recognize. Lisa? A woman's voice asked hesitantly. It's Claire. Mark's wife. Lisa was taken aback. Mark, her ex-husband, was someone she had long stopped thinking about. I hope I'm not bothering you, Claire continued. But I needed to reach out. Mark's not doing well. He lost his job a while ago and hasn't been himself. He still talks about you sometimes, about how he regrets everything. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I just thought you should know. Lisa sat in silence for a moment, processing the news. She didn't wish anything bad for Mark, despite everything. But she also knew she wasn't responsible for his choices. I appreciate you telling me, she finally said. I hope he finds his way. After the call, she found herself reflecting on her past, not with anger or sadness but with gratitude. Every challenge, every moment of doubt had led her here. She had built a life she was proud of, and she was finally at peace with where she came from. A year later, Lisa stood in front of a packed auditorium at Harvard Business School, delivering a keynote speech. 5 years ago, she told the audience, I was just a woman with an idea. An idea that no one believed in. But belief isn't about them, it's about you. The room erupted in applause. As she walked off stage, she felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. Success wasn't just about building a business. It was about resilience, about proving to yourself that you could do what others said was impossible. And as she looked toward the future, she knew one thing for sure. She was just getting started. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa had always believed that success wasn't a final destination but an ongoing journey. After her speech at Harvard Business School, her inbox was flooded with emails from young entrepreneurs, investors, and even a few old acquaintances who suddenly wanted to reconnect. Some messages were from women who had faced the same skepticism she had. Wives, daughters, and single mothers who had been told their dreams were unrealistic. She read each email carefully, responding to as many as she could, realizing that her journey wasn't just about her anymore. She had become a symbol of resilience, a story people looked to for hope. One afternoon, while working from her office in downtown Austin, she received an email that stood out. It was from a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley offering her an opportunity to expand FeedFlow into international markets. The proposal was enticing: access to new networks, unlimited funding, and a chance to make her company truly global. But with that opportunity came a dilemma. It would mean relocating to San Francisco, uprooting the life she had built in Austin. She had fought hard to create stability, to find balance, and now she was being asked to throw herself into the unknown once again. That night, she sat on her balcony overlooking Lady Bird Lake, a glass of wine in her hand, deep in thought. Rachel, who had become her closest confidant, joined her. You always said you wanted FeedFlow to reach as many people as possible, Rachel reminded her. This could be your shot. Lisa sighed. I know, but I finally feel settled here. I don't want to lose that. Rachel gave her a knowing look. Since when have you ever chosen comfort over growth? Lisa laughed because she knew Rachel was right. The decision wasn't just about business. It was about taking another leap of faith. The next morning, she called the firm and accepted the offer. Within a month, she found herself in the heart of Silicon Valley, surrounded by some of the brightest minds in tech. The energy was electric, the competition fierce, and the expectations higher than ever. Investors wanted rapid expansion, developers worked around the clock, and every decision she made felt like it carried the weight of the company's future. But amidst the chaos, there were moments of clarity, times when she walked through the bustling streets of San Francisco, remembering the nights she had worked in silence while Mark had mocked her dreams. She thought about the first version of FeedFlow, the countless rejections, the small wins that had kept her going. And now, here she was, negotiating deals with global tech giants, her company's name spoken in the same breath as industry leaders. One evening, after a particularly grueling investor meeting, she received a message that caught her off guard. It was from Mark. He had found her email somehow and had written a long, rambling message about how he had lost his job, how life hadn't turned out the way he had expected, and how he often thought about the times they had spent together. "I didn't see your vision back then," he admitted. "I wish I had." Lisa read the message twice, feeling an odd mix of emotions: pity, closure, but most of all, indifference. He was a chapter she had long since finished reading. Without a second thought, she deleted the email and moved on. Months passed and FeedFlow continued to thrive. With operations now running in Europe and Asia, Lisa found herself on planes more often than in boardrooms. She loved the excitement, the challenge of building something bigger than herself. But as the company grew, so did the pressures. Investors became impatient for higher returns, competitors launched aggressive campaigns, and the responsibility of managing a global brand weighed heavily on her shoulders. Then one night, everything came to a halt. She was in New York for a tech conference when she received an emergency call from her CFO. A critical security breach had occurred. Hackers had attempted to exploit vulnerabilities in their system, and sensitive user data was at risk. Panic surged through her as she rushed back to her hotel, immediately assembling her team for an emergency response. They worked through the night, sealing the breach, reinforcing security measures, and communicating with affected users. By morning, the crisis was contained, but the damage had been done. News outlets picked up the story, investors were shaken, and questions about the company's future arose. Lisa knew that this was a defining moment. Either she let the crisis consume her, or she used it as a lesson to come back stronger. She chose the latter. She held a press conference, addressing concerns transparently, assuring users that security measures had been upgraded. She personally reached out to key investors, reaffirming her commitment to the company's growth. Slowly, confidence was restored and FeedFlow emerged more resilient than before. Through it all, Lisa realized something important. Success wasn't about never failing. It was about how you responded when things went wrong. And she had spent her whole life proving that setbacks weren't the end of the road. They were just detours to something greater. As she sat in her office overlooking the San Francisco Bay, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the nights of doubt and struggle to the triumphs she had never imagined. She wasn't just the woman Mark had underestimated. She wasn't just a startup founder. She was a leader, a risk-taker, and above all, someone who never stopped believing in herself. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. She squinted at the screen: 6 missed calls from her COO, an urgent text from her legal team, and a string of emails marked high priority. She had learned over time that in the fast-paced world of tech startups, quiet mornings often meant something had gone terribly wrong overnight. With a deep breath, she sat up and dialed back. "Lisa, we have a problem," Daniel, her COO, said without preamble. "The SEC has opened an inquiry into our financial disclosures. Someone reported us for possible misrepresentation of revenue projections." Lisa's stomach dropped. She had always prided herself on running a transparent business, but she also knew how ruthless competitors could be. In Silicon Valley, companies didn't just compete on innovation, they played corporate chess, and sometimes that meant trying to take down rising stars by any means necessary. She quickly dressed and headed to the office, her mind racing. On the way, she called her attorney, Amanda, who assured her that they had done nothing wrong but needed to be fully prepared. "It's probably a fishing expedition," Amanda said. "But we'll go through every document with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we're covered." Lisa exhaled slowly, trying to steady her nerves. She had fought too hard to let something like this derail everything. By the time she arrived at the FeedFlow headquarters in downtown San Francisco, the team was already in full crisis mode. The PR department was drafting statements, the legal team was compiling records, and Daniel was reviewing internal reports. Lisa called for an emergency meeting. "We don't panic," she said firmly. "We get ahead of this. We provide full transparency. If we've made any mistakes, we own them. But we will not let this shake investor confidence." The following days were a whirlwind of meetings, audits, and tense conversations with stakeholders. News outlets caught wind of the inquiry, and soon headlines speculated about whether FeedFlow had exaggerated its growth. Lisa found herself at the center of a media storm, but she refused to hide. She gave interviews, reassured customers, and made sure her team knew she wasn't going anywhere. Then, just as things began to settle, another blow came. A former employee, someone she had fired for unethical behavior, had gone public with allegations that she had misled investors. Lisa read the article in disbelief. The claims were completely false, but the damage was done. The stock dipped, and suddenly she was fighting not just a legal battle but a war of public perception. He barely slept for weeks. Every decision, every statement, every move was scrutinized. Rachel flew in from Austin just to make sure Lisa was eating and taking breaks. "You're not just fighting for feed flow," Rachel reminded her one evening. "You're fighting for every woman who has ever been told she can't lead. Don't let them break you." Lisa nodded, finding strength in those words. She doubled down. She held town hall meetings with employees, personally met with major investors, and launched a transparency initiative that set a new standard in the industry. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The SEC inquiry found no wrongdoing. The false accusations from her former employee were debunked. Feedflow's stock rebounded, and within months they were stronger than ever. But something had changed in Lisa. She realized that she didn't just want to build a successful company, she wanted to change the industry. She wanted to create an ecosystem where women didn't have to prove themselves twice as hard, where startups weren't taken down by petty corporate sabotage. She started mentoring young female entrepreneurs, speaking at tech conferences about resilience, and advocating for ethical business practices. One evening, as she stood on the rooftop of her office building, looking out over the city that had tested her in every possible way, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. She had built something extraordinary, faced every storm, and come out stronger. And she knew without a doubt that this was just the beginning. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa sat in a quiet corner of Sight Glass Coffee in San Francisco, stirring her cappuccino absent-mindedly. The past few months had been an emotional roller coaster, battling legal challenges, fending off false accusations, and proving herself all over again. Feedflow was stronger than ever, but the fight had left her drained. She checked her emails, scrolling past the usual investor updates and product development reports, when one subject line caught her eye: speaking opportunity, TED Talk invitation. She almost dropped her phone. Lisa had always admired TED Talks, watching brilliant minds share groundbreaking ideas, but she never imagined she would be invited. The email was from a curator who had been following her journey and wanted her to speak at TEDx San Francisco. The topic? Resilience in the face of adversity. She exhaled, leaning back in her chair. Could she really do this? Public speaking wasn't her strong suit, but she had a story worth telling. Maybe it was time to step out of her comfort zone. That night, she called Rachel her best friend and biggest supporter. TEDx? Lisa, that's incredible. Rachel nearly shouted. You have to do this. Lisa hesitated. But I'm not a speaker. I build things, I solve problems, You inspire people, Rachel interrupted. That's exactly what TED Talks are about. Lisa agreed. Over the next few weeks, between running Feedflow and mentoring young entrepreneurs, she worked on her speech. She revisited every challenge, every setback, and every lesson learned. She didn't just want to talk about business. She wanted to share what it really meant to build something from scratch while the world doubted you. The day of the event, the auditorium was packed. The bright lights made her heart pound, but as soon as she started speaking, everything faded into the background. She told the audience about growing up in a small town in Texas, about her husband mocking her ideas, about silently working while everyone doubted her. She described the moment she saw her app trending nationwide and the battles she fought to keep it alive. But more than anything, she talked about resilience. When the world underestimates you, let it fuel you, she said, her voice steady. Let every doubt, every rejection, every failure be a stepping stone. Success isn't about never falling. It's about getting up every single time. The audience gave her a standing ovation. When she stepped off stage, her phone was already buzzing. Investors, journalists, aspiring entrepreneurs, people who had seen themselves in her story. That night, as she walked along the Embarcadero, watching the Bay Bridge lights reflect on the water, she realized something. She had spent years proving herself to others, but now she was finally proving something to herself. A week later she received an email from an old name, David. Her ex-husband. She stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Lisa, I saw your TED Talk. I was wrong about everything. I hope you can forgive me. Congratulations on all your success. She smiled, closed the email and never looked back. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa never responded to David's email. There was nothing left to say. Her success had already spoken for itself, and she had no interest in revisiting the past. Instead, she turned her focus to the future. FeedFlow was expanding rapidly, with new offices opening in New York and Los Angeles. Venture capital firms were knocking on her door, eager to invest, but Lisa was careful about who she brought into her company. She had built this from the ground up and refused to let the wrong people take control. One morning she sat in her San Francisco office, looking out at the skyline, when she received an unexpected call. Lisa, this is Mark Rains from Forbes, the voice said. We'd like to feature you on our 30 Under 30 cover story. Would you be open to an interview? Lisa almost laughed. Just a few years ago she had been dismissed as a woman with unrealistic dreams. Now she was being recognized among the most influential entrepreneurs in America. The interview took place at the Forbes headquarters in New Jersey. Lisa arrived in a sleek black blazer, confident yet humbled by how far she had come. The journalist asked about everything: her early struggles, the setbacks, the victories, and what kept her going. I never wanted to prove anyone wrong, she said. I just wanted to prove myself right. The feature went viral, sparking conversations about women in tech, resilience, and innovation. Overnight, Lisa became a symbol of perseverance. She received messages from aspiring entrepreneurs, young women who saw her as proof that they too could break barriers. But while the recognition was gratifying, she knew she couldn't let it distract her. FeedFlow was preparing to launch a groundbreaking AI-driven feature, and the pressure was immense. Investors were watching, competitors were waiting for any misstep, and the team was working around the clock. Lisa led from the front, staying late, coding alongside her engineers, making sure everything was perfect. The night before the launch, she stood in the empty office, staring at the screens displaying the final version of the app. This was it, the moment that could redefine FeedFlow's place in the industry. The launch was a massive success. Within 24 hours, the app had been downloaded over 1 million times. Tech blogs called it a game changer, and users flooded social media with praise. Lisa's phone didn't stop ringing. Potential partners, media outlets, even a message from Tim Cook at Apple congratulating her on the innovation. That evening she sat on her apartment balcony watching the city lights. Rachel called, as always, cheering her on. You did it, Lisa, she said. You didn't just build an app, you built a legacy. Lisa smiled, sipping her wine. For the first time in years she allowed herself to relax. She had spent so long proving, fighting, building. Now she was exactly where she was meant to be. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa's life had changed in ways she never imagined. The success of FeedFlow had brought her financial freedom, industry recognition, and a platform to inspire others. But with great success came great challenges. The tech world was ruthless, and competitors were always looking for ways to take her down. One evening, as she sat in a conference room in the FeedFlow headquarters in San Francisco, her legal team presented her with an alarming report. One of their biggest rivals, a company called ByteSync, had accused FeedFlow of patent infringement. Lisa felt a familiar knot in her stomach. She had fought so hard to get here, and now another battle was beginning. The lawsuit claimed that FeedFlow's AI-driven feature bore similarities to ByteSync's proprietary algorithm. Lisa knew it was baseless. Her team had built everything from scratch. But in the corporate world, truth didn't always matter as much as power and money. ByteSync had deep pockets and a history of crushing smaller competitors through legal warfare. Lisa's lawyers advised her to settle, but she refused. She wasn't about to let anyone bully her out of what she had built. Over the next few weeks, the pressure mounted. Investors were getting nervous, employees whispered about the uncertainty, and the media spun the lawsuit into a David versus Goliath narrative. Lisa barely slept, spending long nights reviewing legal documents, meeting with lawyers, and reassuring her team that they would fight this. Rachel flew in from New York to be by her side. You've come too far to let them scare you, she said, pouring Lisa a cup of coffee in her apartment. You always say resilience is key, This is just another test. Lisa took those words to heart. She called a press conference and addressed the lawsuit head-on. Standing in front of reporters, she said, "Feedflow was built on innovation and integrity. We will not be intimidated by baseless accusations. We trust the legal system and we will prove the truth." The statement went viral, gaining public support. Entrepreneurs, tech leaders, and even some of ByteSync's former employees spoke out in her favor. The courtroom battle was intense. ByteSync's lawyers were aggressive, trying to paint Feedflow as a company that had taken shortcuts. But Lisa's legal team was prepared, presenting clear evidence that every line of code was original. After weeks of arguments, the judge dismissed the case, ruling in Lisa's favor. It was a victory not just for her but for every small startup fighting against corporate giants. As she walked out of the courthouse, reporters swarmed her, asking for comments. She simply smiled and said, "Justice prevailed." That night, as she celebrated with her team at a restaurant overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, she realized something. She wasn't just an entrepreneur anymore. She was a fighter, a leader, and a symbol of perseverance in the tech world. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa thought the legal battle with ByteSync would be the last major hurdle, but she quickly realized that success in Silicon Valley came with constant challenges. Just when she thought she could take a breath and focus on growing Feedflow, another storm was brewing. Late one evening, as she sat in her office in San Francisco, reviewing potential partnership deals, her CTO, Michael, walked in looking worried. "Lisa, we have a problem," he said, placing his laptop on the desk. She leaned forward, her heart pounding. He pulled up a report showing that a hacker had breached their system. Lisa's stomach sank. Feedflow held millions of users' personal data, and any security breach could be catastrophic. Michael explained that their cybersecurity team had detected the intrusion just hours ago. The hacker had attempted to access sensitive information, but the team had managed to block them before they could steal anything. Still, the fact that someone had come so close was alarming. Lisa's mind raced. Cyber attacks weren't just about stolen data, they were about trust. If users lost confidence in Feedflow's security, everything she had built could crumble. She immediately called an emergency meeting with her leadership team. The next morning, Lisa stood at the front of a conference room filled with her top executives, engineers, and security experts. "We have two priorities," she said firmly. "First, we need to make sure our systems are impenetrable. Second, we need to be transparent with our users. No secrets." She knew that many companies tried to hide breaches, but she refused to play that game. Trust was her company's foundation, and she wasn't about to compromise that. Over the next few days, the office turned into a war room. Engineers worked around the clock to strengthen security, while the PR team crafted a message to inform users. Lisa herself barely left the office, surviving on coffee and sheer determination. Meanwhile, the media had caught wind of the attempted breach, and headlines speculated about the safety of Feedflow's data. Competitors saw this as an opportunity to spread fear, but Lisa refused to let them define the narrative. She decided to take control. She scheduled a livestream town hall where she addressed Feedflow's users directly. Standing in front of the cameras, she spoke with honesty and confidence. Cybersecurity is an ongoing battle and no company is immune. But at Feedflow, we are committed to transparency and action. We have already upgraded our security measures, and we are investing even more to ensure that your data remains safe. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Users appreciated her honesty, and industry leaders praised her for handling the crisis with integrity. As the crisis settled, Lisa realized something profound. Resilience wasn't just about fighting lawsuits or proving doubters wrong. It was about adapting, learning, and leading through every storm. That night, as she finally left the office, stepping into the cool San Francisco air, she felt a sense of peace. Feedflow had survived another test, and so had she. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa had barely recovered from the cybersecurity crisis when another challenge emerged, this time from within her own company. It started subtly, with whispers in the office hallways and hushed conversations that stopped when she walked by. At first, she brushed it off as normal office politics, but when her CFO, Daniel, requested a private meeting, she knew something serious was going on. Sitting in her glass-walled office overlooking downtown San Francisco, Lisa watched Daniel close the door behind him and take a deep breath. "Lisa, "We need to talk about Alex," he said, referring to her CEO Alex Carter, who had been with FeedFlow since its early days. Lisa felt a tightness in her chest. "What about him?" she asked, already fearing the worst. Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "He's been meeting with investors behind your back. And not just any investors. Ones who have been vocal about pushing you out as CEO." Lisa's heart pounded. Alex had been her right-hand man, the person she trusted most in the company's operations. The thought of him betraying her was almost too much to process. "Are you sure?" she asked, hoping there was some misunderstanding. Daniel nodded and slid a folder across the table. Inside were emails, meeting records, and even a leaked investor memo discussing a possible leadership change at FeedFlow. Lisa clenched her jaw. "So he's planning a coup," she said, her voice steady but cold. She knew that as startups grew into major companies, power struggles became inevitable. Investors wanted control, executives sought more influence, and founders often found themselves pushed out of their own creations. But Lisa wasn't going to let that happen, not without a fight. She called an emergency board meeting for the next morning. That night she barely slept, replaying every interaction with Alex over the past few months, wondering how she had missed the signs. Had he always been planning this? Or had he simply changed, seduced by power and pressure from investors who wanted a different vision for FeedFlow? The next morning the boardroom was tense. Lisa sat at the head of the table with Alex seated a few spots away, his expression unreadable. The investors who had been conspiring with him were also present, their gazes carefully neutral. Lisa wasted no time. "I know about the meetings," she said, looking directly at Alex. "I know about the proposal to replace me as CEO." A murmur spread across the room, but Lisa kept her focus on Alex. For a moment he didn't respond, then he sighed and leaned forward. "Lisa, this isn't personal. The company is growing and the investors believe we need a leader with more corporate experience. Someone who can take FeedFlow to the next level." Lisa felt a flash of anger but forced herself to stay calm. "I built this company from nothing," she said. "When no one believed in it, I did. And now that it's successful, you think I should step aside?" She turned to the board members. "I understand concerns about scalability, but FeedFlow's success is because of its vision, and that vision came from me. If we start running this company like every other corporate machine, we lose what makes us special." For the next hour she fought for her position, presenting her plans for FeedFlow's future, outlining strategies for expansion, and proving that she was the best person to lead the company forward. When the board finally voted, the results were clear. Lisa would remain CEO. Alex, realizing he had lost, resigned on the spot. As he walked out, Lisa felt a mix of betrayal and relief. She had won, but it had come at a cost. That night she sat alone in her office, staring out at the San Francisco skyline. The city had given her so much: opportunity, success, challenges, but it had also taught her the harsh realities of power. She wasn't just an entrepreneur anymore. She was a leader, and leaders had to be ready for anything. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. After Alex's departure, Lisa knew the battle wasn't over. The board might have sided with her for now, but doubts had been planted. Investors would still question her ability to scale FeedFlow, and competitors were circling like vultures, waiting for the first sign of weakness. She needed a plan. Something bold, something that would prove she was not only capable of leading but of taking the company to heights no one else could. She locked herself in her office for days, poring over data, market trends, and feedback from users. That's when she saw it. An untapped market, one that FeedFlow could dominate before anyone else even realized its potential. Lisa had always known that AI-driven food delivery was just the beginning. The real game-changer was predictive technology, an app that could anticipate what users wanted before they even ordered. Imagine a system that analyzed eating habits, dietary restrictions, local trends, and even the weather to suggest meals at just the right time. It wasn't just convenience, it was revolutionizing decision-making itself. She pitched the idea to her senior team, and at first there was hesitation. "It's risky," Daniel said. "Developing that kind of AI is expensive, and we'd be shifting from our core business model." But Lisa had already run the numbers. "If we don't do it, someone else will," she argued. "This isn't just about staying ahead. It's about defining the future of food tech." With her mind set, she reached out to one of the top AI research labs at Stanford, forming a partnership that would allow Feedflow to integrate cutting-edge machine learning algorithms. She also tapped into Silicon Valley's best engineers, offering competitive salaries and equity in exchange for joining the project. The next 6 months were grueling. Lisa worked 18-hour days, personally overseeing the AI training models, testing user experiences, and negotiating with restaurant partners to provide dynamic pricing based on demand forecasts. Investors remained skeptical, but she didn't care. She was playing the long game. Then on a rainy Friday evening, everything changed. Feedflow launched its predictive ordering system in San Francisco as a beta test. Within days, engagement skyrocketed. Users loved the feature. "It's like the app reads my mind," one customer tweeted. "I was just thinking about sushi and boom, Feedflow suggests the perfect role for my favorite spot." Tech blogs picked up the story. Forbes ran an article calling it the future of food delivery. Investors who had once doubted Lisa suddenly wanted in. But not everyone was happy. Competitors took notice and soon, lawsuits started rolling in. Claims that Feedflow was using data unfairly, that it was violating customer privacy, that it was engaging in anti-competitive practices. Lisa knew it was a smear campaign, an attempt to slow her down while rivals scrambled to catch up. She refused to be intimidated. She hired the best legal team in Silicon Valley and doubled down on transparency, rolling out new privacy features and making Feedflow's data usage policies crystal clear. As the lawsuits dragged on, Lisa found herself in a new kind of battle. Not just in the courtroom but in the court of public opinion. Some users loved Feedflow's predictive AI, but others worried about how much data was being collected. News anchors debated the ethics of AI-driven decision-making. Government regulators started asking questions. Lisa had anticipated pushback, but not at this scale. One evening, as she sat in her office overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, Daniel knocked on her door. "Lisa, there's something you need to see," he said, placing a tablet in front of her. It was a leaked email from a competitor, one of the biggest food delivery companies in America. The email outlined a coordinated effort to discredit Feedflow, working with lobbyists to push for new regulations that would cripple their AI-driven business model. Lisa felt her blood boil. "They're scared," she said. "Good. That means we're winning." Instead of backing down, Lisa took the fight public. She appeared on news programs, wrote op-eds in major newspapers, and spoke at tech conferences about the future of AI and ethical innovation. She didn't just defend Feedflow. She framed it as a movement, a way for technology to empower people rather than control them. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The lawsuits were dismissed one by one. Regulators backed off as public support for Feedflow grew. And then, the moment that changed everything, Amazon came calling. The tech giant wanted to partner with Feedflow, integrating its predictive AI into its grocery delivery network. It was the kind of deal that could cement Feedflow as a tech powerhouse, but it came with risks. Partnering with Amazon meant sharing data, losing some control over the technology Lisa had fought so hard to build. She spent days agonizing over the decision. Investors wanted the deal. It would mean immediate market dominance. But Lisa wasn't just thinking about the next quarter. She was thinking about the next decade. She met with Amazon's executives in Seattle, laying out her terms. Feedflow would remain independent. Data would be protected. The AI technology would continue to evolve under her leadership. To her surprise, Amazon agreed. The partnership announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Feedflow's valuation doubled overnight. Lisa, once dismissed as a lucky founder, was now being called one of the most visionary CEOs in tech. She had proven her doubters wrong, not just by surviving but by reshaping an entire industry. Sitting in her office late that night, Lisa allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. She thought about all the people who had doubted her, her husband who once laughed at her ideas, the investors who had tried to push her out, the competitors who had tried to destroy her. None of them had seen what she had seen. None of them had believed like she had believed. And now they had no choice but to watch as she led Feedflow into the future. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa had always known that success in Silicon Valley was fleeting. One minute you were at the top of the world and the next you were scrambling to survive. The Amazon partnership had solidified Feedflow's dominance, but it had also put an even bigger target on her back. Competitors weren't just trying to out-innovate her. They were trying to dismantle her company piece by piece. The media, once praising her as a visionary, had started running stories questioning whether Feedflow had become too powerful, whether its AI-driven model was manipulating consumer behavior rather than simply predicting it. Regulators in Washington, D.C., were now paying close attention, and Lisa found herself spending more time in meetings with lawyers than with engineers. It started with a congressional hearing. Lisa was subpoenaed to testify about Feedflow's data practices before the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science and Transportation. The hearing took place in a grand chamber in the Capitol, filled with senators who barely understood how AI worked but were determined to appear tough on tech companies. As she sat at the witness table, cameras broadcasting her every word, she knew this wasn't just about Feedflow. It was about the future of AI in consumer technology. Senator Graham from South Carolina leaned forward, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Ms. Carter, how do you respond to accusations that your technology doesn't just predict what people want, but manipulates them into ordering food they wouldn't have otherwise chosen?" Lisa met his gaze calmly. "Senator, our AI is designed to enhance convenience, not control behavior. Customers have full autonomy to accept or reject recommendations, and our system prioritizes user privacy at every level." But the questions kept coming. About data collection, about competition, about the growing influence of AI in everyday life. By the end of the hearing, Lisa had held her ground, but she knew the battle was far from over. Back in San Francisco, things were just as chaotic. An anonymous whistleblower had leaked internal Feedflow emails, suggesting that the AI had been tweaked to subtly encourage higher margin orders. The media pounced on the story, calling it a dark pattern designed to extract more money from consumers. Lisa was furious. She demanded a full internal investigation, determined to prove that Feedflow's mission had never been about exploiting users. When the report came back, it was a mixed bag. While there was no outright manipulation, there were some concerning patterns in how the AI prioritized certain recommendations. Lisa called an emergency meeting with her executive team. "We fix this now," she said. "Full transparency. We publish everything, the algorithms, the weightings, even the mistakes. We don't let anyone define our narrative but us." The decision was risky, but it worked. By openly acknowledging the AI's flaws and committing to ethical AI development, Feedflow managed to turn the tide. Customers appreciated the honesty, and even some of the company's harshest critics admitted that Lisa had taken an unprecedented step in tech transparency. But just as the company was stabilizing, another crisis emerged, one that Lisa had never seen coming. Late one night, she got a call from Daniel, her most trusted executive. "Lisa, we've been hacked." Her heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "A cyberattack. They breached our data servers. We don't know how much they took yet, but it's bad." Lisa rushed to the office, where the security team was scrambling to contain the damage. The hackers had targeted user data, order histories, preferences, even payment details. It was a nightmare scenario. Within hours, the story hit the news. Massive data breach at Feedflow, millions affected. Lawsuits started piling up and customers were deleting their accounts in droves. Lisa had built Feedflow into a tech giant, but now it was facing its greatest existential threat. For the next 2 weeks, Lisa barely slept. She worked alongside cybersecurity experts, personally overseeing the response strategy. The FBI got involved, tracing the hack to a sophisticated group operating out of Eastern Europe. But that didn't help the company's reputation. Investors were panicking, stock prices were plunging, and journalists were calling it the beginning of the end for Feedflow. Lisa refused to accept that. She stood in front of the entire company and made a promise. "We will come out of this stronger. We will rebuild trust. We will set the new gold standard for security in this industry." The recovery was brutal. Lisa ordered a complete overhaul of Feedflow's cybersecurity infrastructure, hiring some of the best ethical hackers in the world to stress test the system. She reached out directly to customers, apologizing for the breach and offering compensation packages. Slowly, trust began to return. But the experience had changed Lisa. She realized that growing a company wasn't just about innovation. It was about resilience. It was about surviving the storms even when everything seemed lost. Months later, as Lisa sat in a cafe in Palo Alto, she reflected on the journey. She had started Feedflow with nothing but an idea and an unstoppable drive. She had fought off doubters, lawsuits, corporate sabotage, and even cyber attacks. And yet, FeedFlow was still standing. She looked at her phone, checking the latest numbers. Customer engagement was climbing again. The stock was recovering. She had done what so many had failed to do. She had survived Silicon Valley. Before going to next, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends. Lisa sat in her office on the 30th floor of her San Francisco headquarters, looking out at the city that had once felt like a land of endless possibilities. She had spent the last decade building her education technology empire from the ground up, revolutionizing how students learned across the globe. But success came at a cost. The legal battles, the constant competition, and the personal sacrifices had drained her more than she ever imagined. The lawsuit filed by Jason Whitman had finally been dismissed, proving her innocence, but the damage it had done to her reputation and peace of mind was undeniable. Even though she had won, the exhaustion lingered. Investors had returned, confidence was restored, but Lisa felt different, like she had fought a war and wasn't sure if she wanted to keep fighting. As she stared at the city lights, her phone buzzed with an email from a school principal in Detroit. The subject line read, "Thank you." She opened it and read about how a group of underprivileged students had used her AI-driven learning platform to improve their test scores and secure college scholarships. One of them, a girl named Rachel, had written a personal note. "I didn't think college was for people like me," it said, "but your program showed me I could do it. Thank you for believing in students like us." Lisa's throat tightened. This was why she had started. Not for the money, not for the recognition, but for moments like this. Yet somewhere along the way, the stress of the industry had overshadowed the mission that once fueled her. The next morning, Lisa made a decision she never thought she would make. She was stepping down. She called an emergency meeting with her executive team, and as they gathered in the sleek, glass-walled conference room, she took a deep breath before speaking. "I've given this company everything I have," she began, her voice steady. "And I love what we've built together. But it's time for me to step away." The room fell silent. Shocked faces stared back at her. "This company is bigger than me now. It's strong, it's growing, and it doesn't need me at the helm anymore." Her CEO, James, who had been with her since the beginning, leaned forward. "Lisa, are you sure about this? You've fought so hard to get here." She nodded. "That's exactly why I know it's time. I want to live, James. I want to travel, to reconnect with my friends, to wake up without worrying about the next crisis." The board approved her transition within weeks, and a new CEO was appointed, someone Lisa trusted to carry her vision forward. On her last day in the office, she walked through the halls, remembering the late nights, the breakthroughs, and even the failures. She had spent years building this, and now she was walking away. But instead of sadness, she felt something else, relief. That evening, she packed a small bag and drove down the Pacific Coast Highway, letting the wind whip through her hair as she left the weight of her corporate life behind. Over the next year, Lisa traveled across America, visiting schools and meeting the students whose lives had been changed by her platform. She sat in classrooms in Chicago where young girls were learning to code, and in rural Montana where kids were using virtual reality to explore the universe. She spent time with teachers, understanding their struggles and dreams. Everywhere she went, she saw the real impact of what she had created, and for the first time in years she felt truly at peace. One evening, while watching the sunset over the Hudson River in New York, Lisa received a call from an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. "Lisa, it's Rachel," the voice on the other end said. "The girl from Detroit. I just wanted to tell you, I got into MIT." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes. "That's incredible," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Rachel hesitated. "I know you left the company, but I just wanted you to know that what you built, it's still changing lives. People like me, we wouldn't be here without you." Lisa hung up, staring at the darkening sky, her heart full. She had spent years chasing success, fighting battles, and proving herself. But in the end, her legacy wasn't in boardrooms or lawsuits. It was in classrooms, in students who had been given a chance they never thought they'd have. She had done what she set out to do. And now she was finally free. If you've liked this story, please subscribe our channel, like and share with friends.